Hello, my name's Mark Saunders, and this is a YouTube video presentation on an aspect of questionnaire design. And in this presentation we're looking at the order of questions and how to make the questions flow to our respondents. And hence quite a lot of the pictures you'll see in relation to this presentation have water flow in. It's one of a series of presentations on questionnaires and also one of a series of presentations on my YouTube channel, Mark Saunders on Research Methods. And you can see the link to this on the bottom left hand corner of each slide, and please do subscribe. In this presentation we're going to be looking at, first of all, question order and issues of bias in relation to that, and then we're going to move on to looking at question flow and in particular how we give instructions and how filter questions can be used, whether we're doing online questionnaires or paper-based questionnaires, or indeed questionnaires where an interviewer reads out the questions and the respondent answers. And obviously, as usual, we'll finish up with references and further reading. So let's start by looking at question order, and the most important thing about this is that it has to be logical to the person answering the questions. So it doesn't necessarily relate to the order you're going to analyse your data, rather the questions have to be logical to the person who's actually filling in, answering the questions. So the questions at the beginning are going to be more straightforward, and these should be ones which the respondent is likely to find enjoyable to answer, and they tend to be questions about attributes, things the respondent has, or behaviours, things a respondent actually does. So there are things which they don't have to think too much about, and the answer should be immediate to them, and we're not asking about opinions here. When we get to the middle of our questionnaire, we can ask more complex questions, because the respondent should by now be undertaking the survey or the questionnaire with complete confidence. They won't be bored or tired at this stage, and so we should be able to, as I say, get these more complicated questions through to them. And then as we move to the end, we ask the more personal and sensitive questions. This is because if the respondent chooses not to answer, we've normally got the rest of the questions already answered, and also we can actually explain these clearly to them because they've got into the questionnaire and the purpose of it, and so it will be easier for them to understand why we're asking these more sensitive and personal questions. So let's now start by looking at bias and the importance of question order in minimising bias. So let's say we've got a questionnaire, and one of the questions says, list up to 5 benefits of the proposed town centre redevelopment. And so our respondent will be typing in or saying these to an interviewer or writing them in by hand on a paper questionnaire, and they'll list up to 5 of these. The next question asks, to what extent do you agree with the proposed town centre development? And you may think, well, what does that matter? But the thing is, you've just already asked the respondent to say what benefits are, and so by asking about benefits first, you're getting them to think about things that would actually be positive about the proposed town centre development, and so they're likely to respond by strongly agreeing rather than strongly disagreeing in relation to the town centre development. They're going to like it because they've already been thinking about positive things. So hence we have to be very careful about bias. Let's now look at question flow, and we need to explain to our respondent and also to a researcher, we've got an interviewer asking questions for us, we need to explain to them how to fill in or complete the questionnaire. And so we need to have instructions that are easy to follow, both for the respondent if they're self-completing, or for the interviewer or researcher if they're actually asking the questions for us. And to do this we can actually help flow by having filter questions, so we actually ask the person a question and depend on how they answer it, depends which question they ask next. But we have to test these to make sure they work, and we need to make sure, especially on paper questions, that the routing, so if you answer one way you go to this question, is easy to follow. We'll have an example of this in a moment. We also need to make sure that the wording is consistent with where the respondent is within the questionnaire and also the data we need to collect. So we need to be thinking of quite a few things here. But let's have a few examples. So let's have an example of giving instructions that are easy to follow. And so this is the example of an instruction which in the questionnaire for the respondent, telling them what to do next. So we have a heading saying your customers, and then the instructions say the following questions are about your business's customers. Please indicate the response that most closely matches your business. And then we have a matrix here of a series of statements on the left-hand side and going through strongly agree through to strongly disagree. Now, looking at this layout, is there anything that you can see that's wrong with the layout? The thing that's wrong is the radio buttons to click on are not spaced evenly. They should be spaced evenly across the questionnaire. And what we have is we have a gap between, in effect, slightly agree and neither agree or disagree, and slightly disagree and neither agree or disagree. So we should have equal spaces between those 5 radio buttons. But other than that, it makes a good example of instructions that are easy to follow, thereby helping question flow. Here's another one using a filter question, and this time we're on a paper questionnaire. So our respondent would see all these questions with the numbers down the left-hand side. And so our filter question is the first question, question 19. Are you currently registered as unemployed? And the respondent can answer yes or no. If they answer yes, they answer question 20. And if they answer no, they go and answer question 25. And sometimes what we see on a paper-based questionnaire to help the flow when they have to skip questions, so in effect they're going from question 19 to question 25 if they answer no, is a simple thing like this, and it's an arrow running through. Did you spot the other mistake on this question? Or this layout? The numbering is incomplete. What's happened to questions 21 and 22? Remember, when you design your questionnaire, if you're doing a paper-based one, make sure there are no missing numbers. So now let's look at a filter question for an online questionnaire. So an online questionnaire doesn't often number the questions, and it comes up with a question like this. Are you currently registered unemployed? And our respondent will answer either yes or no. Let's assume they answer yes. Once they've answered yes, the next question appears. So it's there immediately. So it's straightforward for purposes of answering it for them, because they only get to see the questions that are relevant to them. So in this case, because they answered yes to being currently registered as unemployed, they get the question on how long have you been registered unemployed with an example of how to fill it in. And then there are subsequent questions flowing through afterwards. If we look at the filter question and they answer no to the same question, and again this is an online one, it will take them to a different place. The next question is another filter question which asks, do you currently have a job? And then that would filter them to different parts of the questionnaire. So what we see with online based questionnaires is we can use much more complicated filtering to show the order and the flow of the questions, because our respondents only ever see the questions that are relevant to them, and those are decided on the way they answer the questions. Well, that's really it about questionnaire order and flow, but let's just have a look at a few references. I've listed 3 books here. The first is by a good friend of mine, Yuxel Ikinci, on designing research questionnaires, which talks about this aspect. Fink's book on how to conduct surveys also does so, and my own research methods text with Phil and Adrian, it's chapter 11 if you want to read this further. I hope you found this YouTube video presentation useful, and I'd be really grateful if you'd subscribe to my channel, Mark Saunders on Research Methods, and also told your friends and colleagues about the channel as well. I'm adding new videos to the channel nearly every week, and hopefully they'll be of help to you in your own research.